We are the Keyboard Samurai, a podcast focused on sharing insights to help those working in cybersecurity companies, be them technology or services. Each session, your host, Wil Klu, aka Wil Klu, sits down with professionals in our industry to illuminate topics that will help your security biz, team, or self be better. Let's hack into it now. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Another exciting episode of Keyboard Samurai. Today, I get joined by Dr. Kion here. So I'll let you, Doc, what's the 30 seconds of who you are and why we care?
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me, Will. I'm looking forward to this session and speaking to you and obviously the benefit of your audience. So a little bit of an intro of me. I'm currently CEO at LegalMart, which is a legal tech platform. My background is very much in analytics and data. I've kind of been working in that industry for a long time. I've led 5 digital transformations for my sins in different contexts and different organizations, led cybersecurity teams, obviously analytics engineering, solution architects. There isn't much I haven't done in the tech industry. And I guess the key thing that I've been working on this year is I've got a book called Humanity Reimagined in the Age of AI, which is going to be published next year. And in that, I go into a lot of detail about AI, its impact on society, the way we work, the tech industry more broadly, and some of the societal impacts we're seeing. So hopefully we can have a good, lively debate and of interest to your audience as well.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and I love it. I hear a little bit of myself in there, like kind of. I've done a little bit of everything, right? Not much I haven't touched too. So we're chatting on the future of work and leadership, and I think this is timely. I actually just had an event, and that my company hosted, and the end note that we had was literally what's in the future, like not tomorrow, but like 5 years, 30 years down the road, like when quantum exists and when we've got all of these other crazy things that are going to happen. So generally speaking, to kind of kick it off here, what's the one big thing you see as we look to the future, from a leadership standpoint, especially like that we really have to adjust as leaders or individuals ourselves?
Well, I mean, the key thing you probably know is cybersecurity is always ranked number one as a big risk for business, and it's becoming increasingly so because as we're more and more dependent on technology, and the pandemic has kind of amplified that, and the use of computing systems and everything kind of going online, and that's only extending and increasing. Really, it's the security side of it is really important, but I guess in the next 4 or 5 years, it's just how much AI is going to transform things. It's already making a huge impact in a lot of different areas, and I think from a leadership point of view, I'm kind of on a number of boards, and I advise different organizations about digital and data transformation, and I kind of work with a lot of different organizations around AI strategy. To be honest, I think a lot of leadership teams don't really know what the implications of AI are. They don't really know how to embed it into their organization. They probably don't have a good understanding of what their organization and people within it are already doing. A lot of them you speak to, they'll say, well, no, we don't really use AI in our organization. But then when you kind of delve under the bonnet, you'll see that there's little pockets of people using it and kind of making, use of things like ChatGPT and other things that are available. So I think from a leadership point of view, it's just getting a grip on it and understanding how they need to adapt and how leadership teams need to evolve in this era of AI and what that means. And it's not just about, things that we hear about, improving productivity, increasing efficiency, a horrible one, which a lot of them are kind of jumping on the bandwagon, cutting costs. It's not just about those things. This is also about how you manage people effectively and how you get the most out of the technology. So I think that's a big leadership challenge for a lot of organizations. And what I've seen is, unfortunately, a lot of them have gone down the bandwagon and made huge amounts of changes and headcount and other things, and then had to retract that as they realized, wait a minute, what we thought this was, we haven't really embedded it or implemented it correctly. So it's a big leadership challenge around a number of different areas, and just about better management and leadership, but also embedding it so it's actually useful rather than just something that's a fad and a trend that's not properly embedded in the business.
Yeah, that's kind of everything that I've experienced. Somebody else said this, and I kind of tend to agree that we're kind of the honeymoon period for AI is kind of over. Everybody's now looking at what's been promised and going, you know what, this isn't what you said it was going to be, like you said, and people are backtracking. And from a security perspective, this is a conversation I had a lot at my recent event, which is like you said, they think you're not using it, but they are. right? You may not. It's just another version of shadow IT now. You've got these tools that are being used that you're managed about. So like I've been a strong proponent of get with your business, understand what they are doing and what they want to do, and build some freaking governance around it as soon as possible, because you're not going to be able to control it. And I think we're going to see some type of fallout, and it probably won't be soon. It'll probably be way later when it all kind of gets discovered. And I
Yeah.
don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I've spoken a lot about the ethics around AI, the regulation of it, and in the European Union, you got the EU Act, which gives you some parameters and a framework about how you need to kind of govern the AI and what's good and what's bad kind of uses of it. The UK's got a much more laissez-faire approach, so it's a bit more to market forces. I guess the US is similar. And
Mhm.
obviously, there's a kind of different approach in China that we could probably get into. Might be best to avoid. But I mean, there is a lot, and I think the challenge is that governments don't really understand what the implications of it are, and governments tend to lag behind anyway. And I've worked a lot with the legal industry, and the legal industry should be kind of on the ball with this because it can help set the framework and the parameters to kind of make sure we've got good governance around it, good ethical behavior. Because unfortunately, as you know, AI has opportunities and threats, and the opportunities are it can do a lot of things much more quickly, and it can free up staff if it's used properly to get them to do high value work rather than the usual grunt work that they have to do, or the kind of repetitive stuff. You can automate a lot of that and get them working on higher value things if you're practicing it in a good way. But then the challenge with all of that is obviously you can use it to detect dodgy actors or help with security, but likewise it can also be used against you. And there's a lot of deep fakes and rise in improvement in video quality. So there's lots of
Oh yeah.
stuff happening that I think leaders, governments, and just haven't got their arms around yet. And that's why I kind of wrote the book. And it covers a lot of those issues around the ethics about it, how it's just going to reframe what we understand intelligence to be, how we interface with AI, and how we actually use it as a collaborator rather than as a competitor and something that's going to replace us, but more seeing it something that's going to enhance us. So there's so many debates in there at the moment, and I just think the key thing from me as a leader in this space is just there's a real lack of understanding, and sometimes it's fair enough. A lot of the people in those positions, they're not experts in this area, so it's fair enough. But there's also a lack of really a will to kind of get a hold of on it and just leaving it to what happens. And I think we haven't got much time to really rein it in and kind of get a grip around it. And I guess you're probably sensing the same sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to get back to the ethics part, but the thing you said about, yeah, this is something all technical people struggle with is, the leaders that aren't don't have the CISO, the CIO, CTO, like other than those three or four, whatever it is, that have the technical background, the rest don't. And it's our job as those leaders to bring the knowledge to them. They should care about it. And they probably do, but that's a gap where I think if an organization needs to get their head wrapped around it and understand it, they need to be looking to those leaders to be like, hey, can you figure, like, I know we're using this, I know this thing is happening, like, what do we need to be doing about it?
Yeah.
From the ethics perspective, that's super interesting to me. So I guess what are you seeing from a we need to be better, or we need to think we need to be prepared for this potentially bad thing that's going to happen if we do something wrong? Like I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the key thing that's kind of developed in the last 20 odd years since I've been working in the whole area of data and data science, and 20 odd years ago, I was working in the Department for Work and Pensions, and I was working with fraud investigators using kind of models to better detect fraud and risk models and scoring claimants. And so, but back then, I would, develop a model and leave it for 2 or 3 days, and the processing power was such because it was a big data set of a million kind of observations, hundreds of variables, that I'd have to leave it for a few days for it to actually tell me what the result was and whether this needed to refine it. Obviously, in the last 20 years with cloud, increasing processing power and, like you mentioned before, quantum potentially in the future, this has all become a lot quicker. The models haven't really evolved a lot, and we still suffer from the same problems, and that's poor quality data. And even just getting a grip around the data. Data needs to be improved in quality across a number of domains, its validity, its veracity, etc. A lot of organizations haven't even improved the quality of their data, and they're using this data and they're asking models to be built on it. And obviously, if that data isn't of high quality, what's input? If you've got have bad stuff in, it's going to give you a bad output. And a lot of the things, aside from the general characteristics of quality, of things around bias, which is inherent. And there was a big debate in the legal profession around this, because one of the things that they were talking about was using AI to improve the criminal justice system and speed things up. So, in the UK, things go to court, there tends to be a bit of a backlog. Judges are busy, cases, and especially during COVID and during the pandemic and with COVID, there was a huge backlog and a huge challenge. And they were saying, like, we could use AI to help with sentencing, for example, and roll that out. And you can already see, because you've got this technical background, you're laughing already. You could see that the minefield, because you could get data on judges who've done sentencing in the past, but then you could not be picking up those biases. So, for example, unfortunately, some judges may have been harsher in sentencing of certain groups of people, ethnic minorities maybe being one of them, for example, and then that bias would be put into the machine, or the program, and the training, and actually get replicated. So there'd be a lot of issues around implementing it in that sense. And there was cases of solicitors and lawyers using things like ChatGPT to help them with research. And obviously, they'd have a case they're working on for a client. They'd be looking for the ChatGPT to help them with the research and understanding about that. And then you probably know ChatGPT is still, prone to hallucinations. It works a bit like the human mind. We can talk about
Yeah.
human consciousness and the parallels, but it was giving them plausible answers that weren't actually real, but they sounded plausible. And a lot of these lawyers, and there were some high profile cases, were actually using that and then getting caught out because there wasn't a case that actually existed that they were trying to model what they were doing on. So there's some big risks around ethics, data gaps, quality, and we haven't even addressed those basics yet. And now we've got AI and everything's speeding up, and everyone's an AI expert now. And there's a lot of people out there, you probably know this, Will, who aren't AI experts. They're self-proclaimed experts. And that's the danger, and there's the people in those senior positions, like you said, a lot of them don't have technical backgrounds, so they'll buy into anyone who's a self-proclaimed expert, and then you can cause a lot of problems if you get someone in who doesn't know what they're doing and doesn't really understand the basics of data strategy, quality, and they roll out of a model, and it can be filled with lots of
Mm.
issues around ethics and bias. And a lot of these models aren't very transparent, very open. Obviously, there needs to be an IP around it, and some kind of protection for some organizations that are developing these models, but it's making it a challenge. And for me, you can see so many examples of it. I don't know if you saw, people were typing things into ChatGPT, what's the CEO look like, and they're coming up with
Oh
stereotypical
yeah.
images there. So it's, and I don't know, you probably know about the first chatbots that were developed. They ended up being let loose on Twitter and what's called X now, and they ended up being reflecting the kind of audience being very kind of controversial, sexist, and other stuff that they were kind of mimicking. So AI is a reflection of us at the moment, the individuals that are creating it. And we, unfortunately, as human beings, have a lived
Mm.
experience, and that can be prone to some biases, and some experiences that we had might kind of limit our worldview to an extent. And we just got to be careful we don't transpose that into AI and then make that seem that it's a infallible um,
Right.
explanation or a model for every challenge that we might be facing. So huge issues around ethics and biased still even now.
Yeah, it's yeah, all of the I try to we're in a generation now, and not necessarily people, but like the time we're in, because of all the information, people have expectations to move fast, and we do. Like we all know this. AI has been adopted faster than anything in the history of the world. The
Yeah.
automobile, the cell phone, like everything, and there's no reason to not adopt it, right? And and same thing even with like social change and things that um we've seen impact from people, just kind of having ideas and taking some action and actually being implemented way faster than we would have in the experience. And what I try to remind my kids is like that if you look mathematically, like the 1960s were, I know to people who were born after the 2000s, it seems like a long time ago, but those people who were alive then are still alive, and a lot of them are in leadership positions and kind of running industries and businesses and all. And segregation still existed in the United States at that time, right? So like it does take time to change, and we're teaching all of these models. We're learning everything based off of all the historical data. And I love that you said, like, again, the garbage data in, garbage data out, and that's kind of what resonates with me at the end of the day, is like, you have to have you have to be reasonable in understanding what you're going to train it on, and really be smart about it. I know the companies I see that are doing it right, at least with like in security, where they're using like agentic AI. It shows you how it made the decision. Like, this is why. So you can go back and train it and teach it. I think ethically, we probably need to figure that out too. To be like, well, you made this decision, why? And it can go based off of. And I did hear, I don't know if it was the same one you're talking about, but one of the lawyers at the event we just had was talked about a case in the U.S. where one of the law firms was bringing up a case against somebody else and was citing all of these other cases, and nobody could find those cases. And they kind of could tell that the person had used ChatGPT to like build up their case. And they went and called them out and said, hey, no, you can't, this isn't right, these don't exist. And they're like, no, your process is wrong. Made them, the other law firm, have to go back and do the research and be like, well, did we screw up? Did we miss something? And it got to the point now where they're literally waiting, I guess, adjudication or whatever it's called, where they're basically waiting, and the guy's probably going to get disbarred. Because like they literally just put him on the stand, and the judge just grilled him and got to basically find out the dude's just using GPT or whatever. And
There's going to
terrible.
be more and more issues of that in kind of different areas. And I mean, I was talking to someone about this. One of the other big challenges is, as we kind of embed AI in more and more industries. So, for example, let's take healthcare, and we use AI to help medical practitioners make decisions. We use a decision tree model. If this happens, go down this route, and they become dependent on the AI to help them in their interactions with patients and diagnosis. um, that human element comes out of the equation a bit, and then you trust the AI system more and more, and that system could be wrong. Or what happens if it falters or it goes down? We're taking our own intelligence and our own judgment out of the picture. And my argument in the book is that, if anything, as human beings, we need to rise to the challenge of this and not see us as being replaced, but seeing us as being enhanced. And with that enhancement becomes greater responsibility to manage this technology well before it kind of gets away from us. And it needs to be a good tool that I can see the benefits of it helping with diagnostics or x-rays, or processing information much faster, but it can still make errors. And if
Yeah.
we trust it too much, we can be in trouble. And I think the challenge is, a lot of, like you said, the kind of generational thing. One of the things I uncovered in my book is, obviously, things like loneliness is increasing, mental health. There's a crisis at the moment because people are becoming more isolated, more dependent on the devices. Technology is encroaching. But the other thing is, as well, there's a funny thing, is that actually the younger generation are more skeptical and can see things that are fake or not real in AI, like
Because
adverts
they
and
were raised by a bunch of Gen Xers
yeah, yeah. Whereas
who were
some of the
skeptical
older
of
ones are
everything.
yeah, I mean, some of the older ones. My dad was calling me the other day, and he was like saying, "Oh, in the UK, we've got this political guy. You probably might have heard of him in the US, Piers Morgan." And
Okay.
he's like, talking about like politics, but then his image was being used on YouTube adverts to promote some type of investment opportunity, which was obviously not him. It was just his face and his voice used. And my dad was thinking, "Oh God, he's missing out on something," and he was going. And I said, "No, no, no, don't do that. It's probably some sort of scam." But because he's of an older generation, they're less skeptical, and they're
Mhm.
believing, because the images they're seeing, they're kind of believing it. But the younger generation kind of know it can be AI and a bit more familiar with it, so they're picking up on it more. So it's interesting what you said, that there's that challenge of this generational thing as well, and still those leaders being from that generation,
Mhm.
having a little bit of a understanding of AI, but not too much, and the younger generation having a different perspective on it, and there's still some biases from that generation, and then the young. So it's an interesting challenge, and I can see a huge amount of you know challenges around governing it, and kind of
Mhm.
really kind of making sure that we don't lose our emotional intelligence as human beings, and kind of give it all away to this rise of these machines, and or the automation, and all the other stuff that's going on.
I'm curious because you mentioned something that I think I saw the same report where it was like loneliness was at the top of like, and like I've worked remotely most of my career since 2009 or so. So like for me, establishing relationships via Teams or Slack or Facebook or whatever, like it's fine. Like I have the rebuttal I give to people who are against remote work is that say you can't build a culture is like how many Facebook friends do you have? Like my Facebook friends I have that I talk to more often than my friends that I live around, like absolutely. Or I talk to my friends via text and stuff, like, so we're constantly communicating. And I say all that because I'm wondering evolutionarily, right? Is it just a matter of like those of us who didn't, who've kind of had to be part of this transition of the physical world into the virtual world? I wonder if as our kids start having kids and their kid, like if that loneliness goes away, is it just happening now because people who are used to that human contact, or is it inherently necessary for us as humans to like be physically around people all the time?
I mean, I think I think we need that human contact and that connection. And I agree with you. I'm used to working remotely because obviously the pandemic and and the lockdowns and other stuff, we had to get more used to that. But I guess you and I had the benefit of being from an older age group, not so old, but an older age group. So we had to we still used to play out on our bikes in the
Yep.
street and had our friends. But look, I mean, I don't know how old your children are, but my daughter's 10 and she's grown up with this. And the
Mhm.
way she interacts, she's on her iPad. When she comes around to stay with me, she's on her iPad and she's in her own little world. And she's playing with her friends and chatting with her friends. And she still has, parties where she goes at play dates and sleepovers. But there is something different about their attention. They get bored very
Mhm.
easily. They need constant stimulation. So I'm seeing some things that are, there's some good things in everything and there's some challenges around everything. But my concern is that we could become more and more as an isolated society. I mean, I went to Japan a few years ago, an amazing
Mhm.
culture there, hugely beautiful philosophy and history, but also a sense of isolation and the kind of, high tech stuff as well has got some challenges within Japanese society. And I can see some of that happening as we get more encroached with, I'm a gamer. I've got a PS5 and I've been a gamer, and I'm suspecting you're probably
Yeah.
maybe a bit of a gamer as well. So we're kind of used to that. But again, it's how far can this go? And
Mhm.
is there anything that we need some checks and balances? I'm a believer in balance in life. So I think, yeah, you can have some time to yourself and then, there's nothing wrong with that. You should be able to work alone, but we still need that human contact. And that's what concerns me a little bit about if we let it go too far and we all get involved in these virtual
Mhm.
worlds. What is the end point of that? Where does that lead us as a species? And I don't have an easy answer to that, but I guess in the book I kind of raise it as an important question. But I can see it becoming even more pronounced as generations go into the future.
Yeah, right into the matrix, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, I think about like all of those same things. Like my daughters are older, but lots and lots of virtual friends that they've met, from other countries and other things. It's interesting too, the Japan thing being isolated because I think last summer I remember like the longest lifespan is Okinawa,
Mm,
and they're the like one of their I guess the foundational principles is they're all part of a community and they
yeah.
get together in person, and like that communal support is theorized to be the reason that they all live longer. Also probably really great food in Japan
Good,
in
good
general.
diet. Good
Very
diet as
good
well.
diet, be healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think the other thing on that point is I can't remember his name now, but he's quite a well-known, I think, neuroscientist, and he did a lot of research over about 20, 30 years looking at happiness and what
Mm,
what are the causes or the kind of ingredients for a happy life. And the conclusion they came out with, and they did hundreds of brain scans and research over a long period of time. And essentially what the kind of research found was that it's the quality of your connections as a human being, your
mm,
friends, your family, that determines your happiness through your life. So if we see that as research based on a rigorous methodology, which it was over a long sustained period of time, then what we're seeing now is worrying in that sense. And then you can see, like you mentioned, increases in loneliness,
mm,
increases in mental health challenges. Young people, highest rates of suicide and potentially unhappy depression, all of this sort of stuff. And there must be a connection to this rise of social media. And I think the key thing to me is this sense of comparison.
Mm,
We've all seen it but there's these images that are projected to and bombarded to us constantly of these perfect lives and these perfect people. And the reality we all know is it's not as perfect as is projected, But a lot of the young children and the younger people don't see that. They're sold a dream. And
yeah.
that dream, to get to that dream, you have to go through a harsh reality and a lot of work and sometimes luck and it's not everyone's going to get there, and that's a challenge that I think we're not addressing yet and not dealing with. So yeah, I think there's so many things that we need to get to grips with before we can really kind of embrace this and really realize the benefits. So I'm not all doom and gloom about AI
No,
and
no.
technology, but I think we've just got to balance it.
I'm with you. Human in the loop is what I always say. Like anything that, and I think the EU probably their regulation. I know where there was some stuff passed, at least where I'm at, like locally within the government, where if it's going to make a decision that is of material impact, financial, it has to do with financial or somebody getting a job or somebody being like anything like that. Like the human has to like be part of that process. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Dude, this was awesome. I could keep talking forever, especially we get a little wax philosophic. But if anybody wants to find you on the interwebs, where can they look?
Well, if they just look up Dr. Kion Ahadi, I'll be on LinkedIn. I've been putting a lot of energy into LinkedIn recently, and they can follow me there and reach out there. I've also got a website, kionahadi.com, if they wanted to check out some of the work I do and connect through that as well. Happy to connect with people and carry on the conversation. But it's been a pleasure speaking to you. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks so much, Keon.
Thank you.
Thanks for enjoying Keyboard Samurai Podcast. If you'd like to engage, find Will on LinkedIn at /Wil Klu or visit at wilklu.me. That's WILKLU.me for more info. Disconnecting now. Synac you later.